Hi, welcome to Mayo Clinic. We are so happy to interview you.
Oh.
What? You pointed at me.
Yeah, I was asking like which one of us is opening. And
Oh,
so who
I'm
do I
totally
need to
opening.
put the camera on? And then Amala jumped the gun on the intro.
Back to the
which
skit.
is fine.
Hi, welcome to Mayo Clinic. I'm so glad that you're here to interview today. Can you tell me a little bit about your background?
I'm an oncologist. I'm a doctor. I'm a father. And I'm a lover of this country.
Oh, wow. That is so fantastic, sir. I mean, before we get into anything else here, are you vaccinated? Fully vaccinated? It's really
Potentially.
important. If you're not, we're not going to continue with this interview, sir. So go ahead. Let me know.
Highly potentially.
Okay, I'm going to assume that means yes, but I will confirm that before we hire you. Anyways, it doesn't really matter because I've just got to let you know, we're only hiring vaccine specialists or diversity inclusion managers. Do you have any expertise in any of those fields?
No.
Okay, well, that concludes our interview. Thank you so much for showing up, sir. I know it was short, but you can see yourself out.
The negotiations were short.
Yes. Yeah. Also, don't shake my hand because I don't know if you're vaccinated. So please leave.
Aren't you?
Please leave. Okay,
Thank
scene. Guys, welcome to Will and Amala Live. What an interesting intro that was. You know, we're still working out the kinks when it comes to that new video intro. But guys, our opening skit pertains to a story that we will get to later about vaccine specialists and diversity and inclusion managers being the most sought after jobs in this nation right now. We're also going to be looking at Matt Walsh and his appearance on Dr. Phil. Plus, are women now supposed to be known as menstruators? Is that the better term to sort of be inclusive and be diverse in the language that we use here? Plus, did transgender swimmer Leah Thomas really just botch her race against transgender male?
It's getting confusing.
It is getting a little bit confusing here at their Penn State swim race. Is that what happened? Plus, we have some powerful videos of young people speaking out about education and how COVID has affected them. Plus, is the Great Reset real? Is it really happening? Should we be worried? And it's Throwback Thursday. So let's get into story number one here. And story number one is a loss, unfortunately. We had covered before that Scotland, Wales, and the UK were going to be rolling back their COVID restrictions, particularly as it pertains to vaccine mandates and masks and vaccine mandates for kids in school. But now we have this update from ABC News that the Austrian parliament has approved vaccine mandates for adults, and this will go into effect as of February 1st and is the first of its kind in Europe as far as a ruling goes.
Yeah, it's going to be leading the way. And I have to say, I'm quoting someone great here. I mean, this isn't the first time that tyranny in Europe has been born out of Austria. So I have to put that out there. So what happens in Austria might be a clear indication of what's going to happen throughout the rest of Europe, Western Europe. I mean, if you go to these countries, you will understand that these are not conservative havens. They are places where they are filled with leftism in basically all of their parliaments. Anyone who is in Europe, who is watching the show, in Brussels this weekend, there is going to be a massive protest that you can show up to. Okay, go to Belgium, go to Brussels. There is going to be a massive protest. I hope that all of you guys there find out about it so that you can go and show your support against these types of these edicts, these draconian measures that don't work. I mean, right now with Austria, they have a 72% fully vaccinated population, yet they're still having a spike in cases, despite having a 72% spike in cases. And it's not just unvaccinated in those hospitals, let me tell you. So go show your support. Protests against this. We are seeing people in these countries with hundreds of thousands of people protesting, and you got to keep letting your voices be heard. You got to keep going out there and saying what's happening.
Yeah, because right now this is aged 18 and over, this legislation. I'm curious to see if they move forward and start doing this with children, like the 5 and over mandates that we've seen try to take hold here. And it's interesting. The law stipulates exemptions for pregnant women. I wonder why. That might be an exemption that the Austrian government feels the need to make, and I'll let you guys come to your own conclusions on that and do your own research. But it's really interesting to see lawmakers voted 137 to 33. That is a vast majority in this sense, and it shows just how little people value personal freedoms and personal autonomy, and how far the brainwashing has gone when it comes to COVID-19. To see an entire country mandate that adults be vaccinated is just an interesting thing, and I don't think this will be the first in Europe. I don't think it will be the last.
Yeah, Germany has expressed interest in doing something like this as well. Germany basically wants to roll out their 2G pass, or Europe wants to roll out their 2G pass, which is essentially vaccine papers with a QR code and negative testing, all these different types of things. I urge that all of you guys look into this 2G system that Europe wants to put in place. But definitely, as the rest of the world, as the UK and other places are starting to ease restrictions, as Eastern European countries are easing restrictions and not really caring about any of this. You have Western European countries like Austria, like Germany, like France, like Italy, who are just doubling down and pushing even harder. So as the pendulum swings really hard one way, it always comes back the other way.
Yep. And Will, you're going to be there shortly, right? In Europe. Do you want to tell people about that?
I'm going to be in Europe in a week and a half. I'm flying into Holland first, and I'm spending a couple days there. Then I'm going to Hungary and speaking in Hungary. Then I'm speaking in Romania. These are Eastern European countries that know what communism is like. After that, I'm going to Monaco and gambling all my money away. And then after that, who knows? But it's going to be a wonderful time. So
Put
I will
it all
let you
on
guys,
red.
Yeah, put it all on red. I always do.
Genius.
I always do. But I will let you guys know how it's going. I'll be filming some stuff for the show while I'm gone for those 2 weeks and videos so you can see really what's happening in Europe. So you guys will get a clear indication of here's what's happening in these countries for many of the Americans who watch the show who've never had that perspective. So I'll be giving it to you guys. You guys will get daily updates from me.
Yep. So there's your update, and we hope that other countries don't follow Austria, because it really is just setting a bad example. We're going to move on here to something you might have been seeing on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, and it's these clips of Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, Real Daily Wire, being on Dr. Phil to talk about transgender ideology and the move towards gender theory and kids transitioning as transgender individuals. He had a lot to say and actually went up against a few, I believe, non-binary identifying people. I don't know. It's not stipulated in this videos, but let's react to this because everybody's been talking about it.
That's a question I would like to throw out to other members of the panel, actually, because just like the 4-year-old can't answer what is a girl, well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't, because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
how
that's
do you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies, we could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what they believed in their head, but we can tell what sex they were because it's ingrained in every fiber of their being.
Interesting. So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Is a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe someone who is female, identifies as a woman, right? Cisgender woman, right? As you just explained, maybe doesn't have the ability to reproduce. Maybe doesn't have those organs that you're talking about that are reproductive organs.
I have answered the question. You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not
but
myself.
You used the word, so what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it means?
Right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
that describes what?
People who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What?
Okay, we'll cut that clip off there because we've got a few other ones, but it's very clear that there's no explanation of what it means to a woman, to be a woman when it comes to trans ideology.
I said I can't tell you what a woman is because I don't identify as a woman.
Right.
I can tell you what a black person is. I can look at Amala, tell you this is a black person.
Yes.
I'm not black, but I can tell you what it is. I can tell you what anything is.
Yeah.
That's just researching something and knowing what it is.
Yeah, and that's an interesting part of leftism, and an argument that they tend to cushion themselves with all the time is that because you are not a part of this particular marginalized group, you have no right to identify it or to talk about it or to define what it is. And it's really just this way of creating sort of like amorphous language that means nothing and the lines are blurred so that anybody can be what they want to be. And you can't pin down an argument because it's all subjective.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you can't talk about abortion because you're not a woman. It's like, who decided Roe v. Wade? It was all men. Who decided, who gave women the right to vote? It was all men. I
Right.
mean, to say that you can't go and talk about these things, they only want you to talk about these things if you agree with their agenda. Then it's fine. It doesn't matter what intersectional group you're a part of. But if you disagree, then they try and say, "Oh, well, you're not trans, or you can't say what a woman is." It's like in what world does that make any sort of sense?
Right. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And just think about this from a linguistic standpoint. To say I identify as something. If I said I identify as a turtle and then stood in front of you and was unable to define what the word turtle meant, that's not an identity because you're not identifying as anything if it is this sort of subjective state of being. And somebody who I like talking about this issue is Sam Harris, and he talks about transgenderism and the fact that the term and the state of being transgender would not exist if you didn't acknowledge a binary form of gender. To be trans something is to negate what you were biologically born as and say, no, I am in fact this. But if you do not have a definition for what you are in fact stating that you are, you're lost. You're lost. And I think Matt Walsh points this out perfectly. And it's very interesting to hear just two people say, I cannot give you an accurate description of what it means to be a woman.
I know.
Yeah.
Nice beard. I'm talking to Matt
accurate.
Walsh.
Yeah. They all had
They
good
all had
facial hair, I
beards.
think.
Yeah.
I think they all had
Especially
facial
Dr.
hair.
Phil.
All four people on this little panel had nice facial hair.
Should have put me on 2 weeks ago. I could have been on that panel.
Here's another clip of Matt Walsh on Dr. Phil talking about the same subject matter.
There should be no construct of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as
Yep.
and assigned
He's getting
at
there.
birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the reality. So you can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I actually am those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. Makes no sense. You don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar. That's language.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone is self-delusional.
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things. With children,
Wow.
you know, there's also just a basic confusion that all kids have. Like that's why when you hear a parent say, "Oh, my 4-year-old son came to me and said that I'm a girl now, and so that's what I'm gonna raise him as a girl." No, you're a 4-year-old. I have 4 kids. When a 4-year-old boy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a girl," here's a good follow-up question. What is a girl? Ask him what he means by that. What do you mean by girl? And when you ask him that, here's what he'll tell you. He will tell you what he really means is that he wants to do some of the things that girls do, like play with the dollhouse, or you know, he likes the color pink. That's fine, play with the dollhouse, but you're still a boy.
There we go. Yet another good point. I mean, so many good points made there, particularly as it pertains to compelled speech. And I think that's where a lot of conservatives lie on the transgender argument is that if you are an adult and you want to be transgender and transition, by all means, go ahead and do that. But for you to then come to me and say that I must participate in your view of what reality is and then compel my speech, and if I don't use the terms that you tell me to use, I am somehow at fault, is where the line is drawn.
Yeah, you can't compel me to say something that I don't believe in, right? Unless you just won't do it. That's why this has gotten into such a heated debate, because people are trying to compel. This is how Jordan Peterson got originally famous, because in Canada they were trying to compel him and say, you have to call these people what they prefer to be called.
Yes.
And he said, no, like you can't make me say something that I don't believe in, essentially, right? And it's like
Right.
he'll call them that if they really ask him to, and they say, call me this, he's like, okay, I'll call you that. But the government cannot come in and compel me to call you whatever thing, because it'll change the next day.
Yep.
You can't compel my speech to believe something. And even if you do compel somebody's speech, you can't make them believe it and accept it.
Right.
But that's what the left wants. These people on the left, they want total dominion over it. They want people to totally just shut up and say, you have to believe this, otherwise you're a transphobe.
Yep.
And it's just not true. What you're saying is just not real.
Yeah, and he makes an argument here that I wish was delved into a little deeper, because I know when I was growing up, of course, I was a leftist and I promoted all these progressivist ideas. And one of those ideas was that there was no gender roles. And I know you all remember this because this was in a wave of feminism that we went through in this nation where they said there's no gender roles. It's not for boys to like blue or girls to like pink and girls to like dolls and boys to like action figures. And we said raise boys and girls the same. Teenagers were walking around wearing the t-shirt saying we need to raise boys and girls the same. They're no different. We're all equal. Yet when it comes to transgender ideology, we look at children and say you're a boy who likes girl things, even though apparently girl things do not exist. Therefore, you are a girl. So we then revert back to believing that gender roles do exist and that boys who like feminine things are expressing feminine characteristics and could have gender dysmorphia, and girls who like quote unquote male things that we said a couple years ago didn't exist now have male characteristics and should be transgender males. So where does it lie? Are there gender roles that we can ascribe a gender identity to, or are there no gender roles and people can like what they like? And I think it's the latter.
Amala, you're trying too hard to make sense of things that just don't make any sense. They don't make any rational sense. If they made rational sense, then, it'd be a fair discussion, but it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
What you just described, you described it perfectly, but it doesn't make any sense.
It's just amazing to me to sit in front of somebody and hear them say liking pink and liking girl things and liking boobs and like wanting boobs does not make you a woman. They say the reproductive organs don't make you a woman. The boobs don't make you a woman. But as soon as I choose to identify as woman, I'm undergoing surgery to get those things. Yet they mean nothing to womanhood and they're insignificant through your definitions. But it's the first thing that you're getting in line to do when you identify as transgender.
Right. No, most guys want boobs, just not their own. Want someone else's.
Right.
So does that make me trans?
Yes.
Yeah?
I guess it does.
I guess so.
I guess it does.
Listen, sign me up.
It's just a really, really interesting thing. We have one more clip from Matt Walsh on Dr. Phil, and then we're going to talk about something that he said on his show post being on Dr. Phil. Here's that last clip.
There's biological sex, and then there is gender identity. Part of me wants to ask why you care so much, because it's really not that big of a deal.
Can I answer that? I'd love to answer that question. I care about the truth. So basic truth matters. I want to live in a society where people care about the truth and we're grounded in truth.
Right.
I care about children, and these insane ideas about gender are being foisted on kids, and that bothers me quite a bit. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them. I care quite a bit. Yeah.
Yep. I just stepped outside of this for a second to just watch this, and it's a man defending what it means to be a man and a woman across from three non-binary personalities, and behind him is a screen of Zoom callers who are calling in to watch because of a pandemic that they don't want to leave their houses from. And if that is not the perfect, encapsulation of what it's like to live in this day and time, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
They say, I love it when they say it's not that big of a deal. Because
right.
it's the worst argument that they can make. It shows how ridiculous their argument is, because they're the ones who have thrust this onto us. They have put it on the children. They have said, you have to call me this. They have said, if you don't agree with this, then you're a transphobe. And it's like, you're the one making it a big deal. You have come out and said all of this and made it into a big deal. No one else was talking about this until you said, you have to call me by this, or that you have to agree that you can let your child go and do this, and I can abuse my child by doing this. You have made it a big deal.
Yep.
But they try and minimize it to you as like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's a huge deal. And it should be something that people care about.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into the point that I always make, and it's a point that I think was missed on this show, the amount of suicide in the transgender community. So when you sit there and go, I don't know why you care so much, a point should have been made that transgender people are killing themselves at a rate that is unheard of. And if you are truly caring about that community, you would care to go through the right form of treatment to mitigate that and to stop that from happening. And to then look at that, and I don't know whether or not these non-binary individuals are aware of the suicide rate within the transgender community, although I'm sure they may be. If you truly cared, wouldn't you want to go, hey, why are we doing this? And unfortunately, the narrative that has been pushed by the political left is that the reason the suicide rates are so high is because it's not being accepted. But we live in one of the most accepting nations in the world of this form of identity. So much so that we allow people to get hormone blockers and change their sex. Yet the suicide rates don't change. And that's something that should have been talked about. And that's why people care.
We're the most accepting nation in the world. I mean, to be trans, and if someone says something bad about trans people, like in a classroom or at work, I mean, you are immediately lambasted as a horrible person. I mean, you lose your job. But if you come out and say you're a conservative, I mean, look at these people, these people in January 6th who are getting arrested, and they didn't even go into the Capitol. I mean, people are now having the FBI come and investigate them for their, essentially, for their political views. What kind of a country do we live in? And these people aren't committing suicide. Conservatives aren't coming and committing suicide, even though we're not accepted. And some conservatives are getting arrested for basically the things that they believe in. But these people are coming and saying, oh, it's because of suicide rates. It's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. It's because it has to deal with mental illness and delusion.
Yeah, it points to a much deeper problem that requires clearly a different form of treatment. And to just affirm people and go through what is body mutilation, especially as it pertains to young children, is a disservice to not only the people, but the communities that you push this narrative to. Because you are indoctrinating a whole new generation of people who are not going to know the negative side effects until they're feeling them, until it is them, until it is that confused child who thinks that they're a boy when they're actually a girl, and until they go through that mental illness because of what you've supported. So at the very least, educate yourself on what you're advocating for before you say that it's the tried and true reality, because it's not. Now, here's this last video of Matt Walsh on his own show. This is where I start to deviate, and Will holds the line for support of Matt Walsh.
I do.
I disagree with a lot of the things said in this particular video, but as far as Dr. Phil goes, it was great. So here's this last video from the Matt Walsh show.
About everything you say. What's more, I think you're narcissists and bullies. I think you don't give a damn about anybody or anything but yourselves. I think you advocate for opening up bathrooms and sports teams because, from your perspective, the rape, trauma, and abuse that happens as a result is worth it, as long as your ideology wins the day and your self-perceptions are reinforced, because that's all you care about. I think you represent something that is not only anti-scientific and irrational, but evil. And I think you have evil intentions. I think you're bad people. And I think that you are neither correct nor well-meaning. And if one person in the whole world, in your whole life, saying this to you causes you to spiral into depression and be plagued by nightmares, maybe that should clue you in. It sounds like your conscience is trying to tell you something. You see, people scream at me every day, and they say the most horrible things about myself and my family. I encounter more outright hostility in a day than you have in your whole life. I guarantee you that. I didn't have the audience clapping for me. You do. And yet I've slept like a baby every night since that taping. That's because I know I'm standing in the truth, not just factually, but morally. You don't have the same self-assurance. Well, then maybe you should look within yourself. That's all you ever do anyway. You're constantly staring back into yourself, shouting into the cavern of your own ego, listening to the echo. Well, while you're in there, maybe try a bit of actual introspection. It might serve you well.
Yikes. Okay. You want me to start?
Yeah, what do you know?
Okay. There's a lot of things that I think have been misstated and misconstrued as it pertains to people's intentions when it comes to transgender ideology. To look at somebody and to look at those people who decided to come on Dr. Phil and defend not only their life choices, but the life choices of a community that they identify with, and to say that you believe that their intentions are evil in doing that, I think is misplaced. And what it does is I'm thinking of, I always look at the lens of who I was before and what I believed before. And if this was the clip that I saw of Matt Walsh rather than the Dr. Phil clips, I would be on the other side of this. And I would have said, you know what? I think we need to support the trans community even more because of what you just said. Because here's a side that comes to the table and says, hey, this is my identity. I know it's not a normal identity. I know it falls outside of what your view of binary is, but I'm not evil. And you hear so often the left characterizes conservatives, oh, they think we're evil. They disregard us. We are just trying to help people. We have good intentions. And then to hear somebody go, you are evil and you have evil intentions and you know that you're committing harm, when clearly that's not the case with these two individuals, I think is a disservice to the discourse that could happen around this issue.
Yeah, I don't know if that's clearly not the case with these individuals.
Okay. You want to, why would you think that?
The way that they came after Matt Walsh and he, as he brought up, saying, you know, these people are having nightmares and these horrible things happening. I mean, they made it all about them. I mean, their egos are incredibly inflated. the way that they are acting. And they're acting like children, these people, the way that they've reacted to the negative press from people coming after them after their appearance on Dr. Phil. And so that type of egoism shows that a lot of this is for their own self-interest. The reason why they push so much of this is for their own self-preservation, for their own self-interest, and so that other people will conform to their ideology. And if they, unless they are living under a rock, they would have to know about the suicide rates, about the rape, all of these things, about the opportunities for women. They would have to know about these things. And if they can see that happening and disregard it, then there has to be a level of evil there.
But if your framework is that these things are happening to the transgender community because they're not accepted, of course, your priority would be to have them be accepted. And I think to have two people, which is so uncommon on the left, to have two leftists come to a show with a conservative who is well researched in the field and talk to them, shows good intent, not evil intent, because if they had evil intent, they wouldn't even show up. There would be no reason to come and deal with the things that they truly believe. And when I think the intent, as far as what Matt Walsh is trying to achieve here, should be parsed out. Is your intent to just call people evil and call out bad things that are happening, or is it to persuade people? And if the intent is to persuade people, you did a great job while you're on Dr. Phil. I would watch that as a centrist or a leftist and go, you know what? He made a good point. He held up his argument. They couldn't define what a woman was. He talked about how women are having their opportunities stolen. He talked about the children that are being affected by this. But then if you turn the channel, and it's his show where he says, you know what? No, these people are stupid. They're evil. They have evil intentions. It reverses everything that you just watched.
I understand why you'd say that. But I think that there is a degree of evil to these people. Because if you can see it, like, evil persists when good men do nothing. If you can see evil happening and you don't do anything about it, then you are, in a sense, evil.
And this is the argument that I made. This is misplaced. There are a ton of people that you could go after and truly call evil as far as it pertains to transgender ideology. These are doctors that are studied and known how irreversible the damage is that they're doing to children, what the suicide rates are. They are clinically studied in these practices and yet still subscribe to a narrative. Those are the people that are evil. The well-educated, fully informed people are the ones who are evil. What happens with these two people who showed up on Dr. Phil, and I think the vast majority of the trans community and people who support that ideology, is that they are used as pawns by those well-informed people. They are not evil. 4 years ago, I would have been supporting the people who were going against Matt Walsh here and saying they're absolutely right and he's just completely misrepresenting them and who they are. I was not an evil person. I didn't have evil intent. I wouldn't have thought about the suicide rates in the transgender community and how people were being harmed. But if I had turned on YouTube and saw Matt Walsh call me an evil person, or anybody at the Daily Wire, or any conservative say you're evil because of the things that you think, I immediately would have written off conservatism. I would never have looked any further into it.
Sure, there is a chance that these people could be pawns, but you
They
play a game of chess, you still take out the pawns. You don't leave the pawns. I mean, you take out all, you want to take out all the pieces on the other side of the board.
That's
and you take it out just like you take out the queen. You know, this is still the same strategy, the same way that you do it. And the pawns are supporting what the queens are doing. So maybe they're not the grand masters of these types of things. I understand that, okay? But if you are pushing the ideology and supporting it and seeing what's happening, and you know that this is happening behind the scenes, then you are a perpetrator of evil. And it also is, I mean, the way that they acted towards Matt Walsh shows their egoism. I mean, it shows how conflated
Where was the ego there at all? I saw no interruption. I saw no interruption on their part. I saw them ask him questions.
Afterwards.
Yeah, because they got an onslaught of hate afterwards, as I'm sure Matt Walsh did. And it's interesting because in the video that he makes, he talks about how he gets hate every single day. And he says his family gets hate and he gets it on the internet all the time. And he talks about it as if it's a bad thing. If that's a bad thing, why turn around and throw it back at somebody and say, well, if I'm the one person doing this to you, it's okay.
Well, he didn't say that he hated them.
No, he said he gets a lot of hate.
Right.
Right. And he's saying, now I'm going to be the one person to tell you that you're evil and that you have bad intentions, just like I get told every day. It really seems like...
No, it's because of the way that Matt Walsh handles it. That's what I'm saying. Is that the way that Matt Walsh handles it is he's not coming and complaining and making it about himself, whereas these people are coming and saying, oh, it's so difficult, it's so hard, it's about me, me, me. Look at me here complaining and saying all this. It's like, you can tell that it's about themselves. Right?
As it would be for most people. Matt Walsh is not a particularly sensitive guy. I think we both know that,
and that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
That's why yeah, exactly. But that's why I'm in support of this, because that type of sensitivity, if you are a leader in a movement, cannot be, you can't let that out. You have to be tough.
It's not evil. That's what I take a qualm with, is And I think it's why we are so divided. We as conservatives look at leftists and they call us evil on a day-to-day basis, constantly calling us evil. And that is wrong. And we identify that that is wrong. In fact, we complain about the fact that it is wrong. For us to then turn around and say that they are too evil and fight fire with fire and stoop to that, moral low of doing the same thing, I think is wrong.
Right, not every leftist is an evil person.
Right, exactly.
The ideology that they represent is evil.
Sure,
Things
you
they
can go
believe
for
in.
that.
But there are many people who on the board of the chess game represent that evil and push it out there. And if you are pushing out evil ideas, then you are evil.
I don't agree. I really don't agree.
Like, because there are so many people out there.
At 17, was I an evil person?
Well, it depends on the ideology.
It was the same exact ideology. Everything that's being said now is what I was saying and what I was doing, and I was getting paid to do it. I was working for it. And that doesn't make you an evil person. You feel like what you're doing is correct, and you feel like what you're doing is helping people because you are reinforced by evil people that tell you that it is.
Of course.
So
but
it
then
doesn't
how
make
far
you
up
evil.
does it go? You know, if it's like you and then someone else and then someone else, is it only the person at the top who's evil? Is that the only person that bears any responsibility, or do the other people bear responsibility?
They bear far more responsibility than the
Sure.
people
No,
below
they
them do.
They do bear more responsibility.
Yeah, and what I again take qualm with is that this doesn't achieve anything. The Dr. Phil segments, the talking through what the definition of a woman being means, why transgenderism is harmful, that does something. That turns the dial. That is what people see and they go, okay, I'm listening now. There's two people having a conversation. And then this last depiction is just not, I can't see what that does to further any good as far as the discussion goes.
I get what you're saying. I think that it does do a lot of good because I think it takes people who, excuse me, might be too afraid or scared to come out and speak about these things and say, listen, now there's like this guy, he's a leader for us. We see that he is being strong and brave about this kind of stuff, and he's calling out evil as he sees it. And now it inspires me to go and do more, right? So these types of things inspire people to go and do more. And I don't think that he's dropping down to like a morally insensitive level or stooping to a low. I think that because it really depends on the definition of whether you are saying these people are evil or not. And that's where you and I have the disagreement. But
yeah, and I think that's exactly what's said.
If you do consider these people evil, for the people who are watching this right now, if you do consider these people evil, then Matt Walsh did the exact right thing.
Right, and it's a what I believe is a misplaced characterization.
Right.
So you'd say they're evil, I'd say they're not evil.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there is so much of that. And I'm not saying that you can't be changed. There are evil people who do evil things that come and are changed into great, good people, right? I mean, you got Saul, like all these types of people. So you can be changed into a good person and do these things. But I think that we have to come as a society and say, listen, this is evil. And you call out the people for being evil so that we can try and make a change of it.
Yeah, I just don't think that creates the change. I would much rather have somebody be inspired by the discussion that happened on Dr. Phil than by that last video.
Yeah.
And
it's like a communist.
Yeah.
A communist, like you're not going to have for the most part, with many communists, you're not going to have a good conversation with a lot of communists because communists seek to destroy.
Yeah, but here's what happens is you had two people who said, yes, I'm going, like I said, which is rare of leftism. You had two people who said, I'm going to go on Dr. Phil and I'm going to do this. And they go and do it and they have the conversation. And it goes seemingly very well. There was not a lot of contention, a few interruptions here and there, but they go and have this. You want to incentivize more people to do that. And then to go on your program and then call them evil and then have this whole onslaught of things that happened afterwards. It's not going to incentivize people to have the discussions. And what changes legislation and the way people look at the transgender community is not discussions like that. It's the ones like that happened on Dr. Phil. And now more people are not going to have them.
And so the point is that sometimes it's not about discussion. Sometimes it's about winning.
Right.
And which sometimes you have to do. You have to, that's how civilizations are made. You make civilizations by winning.
I just don't see the win here. I don't see the win.
Well, if it inspires people to go run for school board and local office and get involved in politics and speak their mind on social media and talk to their friends about it, if it does things like that, then it is, in my opinion, it is a good thing to do.
Right.
And so you have to be able to have those wins.
I'm arguing that discussion is far more inspirational to getting people to have those discussions, to run for school board, to do these things than what was done in that last video.
I wrote a whole book on it. I wrote a whole book on having the conversations with
how
people.
To what? Win friends
and
influence enemies.
Right.
Is that at all influential to enemies whatsoever? Is that at all?
I think it can be. But I think that, after writing my book and doing a lot, I think that there comes a point where there are people whose minds just won't change. You know, Dennis Prager says the same thing. There are people whose minds on the left whose minds just won't change. And because of that, that means that your intention is not to change that person's mind who won't be changed. It is to defeat them. And when you defeat them, it means your ideas win. I will not let my children be subjected to this demagoguery and disgusting ideology that these people preach. I want their ideology to be eradicated. And so I will work to win. You know, if their mind will not be changed, then I will win.
I just think we have different views on how you win. It looks like Taylor put out a poll. 72% of us, of them agree with you. 28% with me. And I think this is
unpopular opinions are way better, Alma.
No,
I say that all
I'm
the
fine.
time.
I stand by my deduction of things because that's how I communicate with people, and that's sort of the vision that I have for the way that people communicate in the future. And it's definitely not that video, but it's I don't know. It's just that I think that is going to be far more impactful to do it that way. But I feel like every time that Will and I disagree on any lines, it's that Will is like taking an extreme, more coarse, strong view, as he does as a man, and I take the more compassionate, slow,
No, but I feel like
conversation driven.
Like you guys, if you guys have seen my videos on PragerU where I'm going and talking to people and or during a Q&A at one of my speeches, if you guys have been there, I mean, I am as strong as I can be on this show. When I go and talk to people, I'm very compassionate with the people who I talk to, and I ask questions and I try and change their minds. There's no, you cannot go on the record honestly and say that I have not gone out there and done every single thing that I can to try and change people's minds in the best way possible. So what I'm saying is that through actually talking to thousands of people, you know, not just on a show, not just in a video, it is actually going and talking to thousands of people. Some people's minds just won't be changed. And so when it comes down to that, it is time to win. It is time to win. And you have to do that by emboldening your own side to be fighters. And if you can do that, then you can take the country back.
But there's such a separation that comes. Matt Walsh, by no means on Dr. Phil, called them evil or stupid or narcissistic on the show. Why not say that to their faces if that's truly what you believe they are? If that's truly what you believe, and that's the stance that you've taken, you are on a show that is going nationwide. You're sitting in front of two people who you characterize to be evil narcissists. Why do you wait until post the show to tell them that that's what they are instead of exposing them live on TV? It's because you would never say those things to somebody's face, because it's not a nice thing to say to somebody's face.
Right, and you know, no one nice has ever created a civilization. I don't know if he should have called it to those people's
Taylor,
faces, but
you have something.
I mean, it's not necessarily true. I mean, compared to like the tyranny that Americans lived under before we made a republic that was whole based on representation and people negotiating their differences through discourse and debate. Until then, all we had was tyranny.
Yeah, but how did they get there?
This framing of the problem as we need to win is...
But they did. They fought a revolution
back to that
for
primitive mentality. I know.
No, they fought a revolution. They literally
in order
killed
to
people
establish
on the
a
other
system.
Right, of course. So but what I'm saying is that you have to be able to sacrifice to win, and then once you do that, then you can develop that type of society. But you have to be strong. They literally killed people from Britain to make that exactly what you're saying.
Right.
You know? So they had to say, we are going to win. They tried to have conversations with the British. I mean, they tried to do all this, right? But there comes a point where that doesn't work. There comes a point, you know, tyranny comes to a certain point and you say, listen, no longer do these conversations work. You think they're working right now in Austria where you have hundreds of thousands of people every single weekend going and protesting? You know, it's like it gets to a point where your intention has to be to win, not just to change minds, because some people's minds, especially if you're talking about the kings and queens on the chessboard, their minds aren't changing and they're influencing all these pawns. You have to call evil where you see it, and you have to say, listen, time to win.
But the point of chess, people were saying this in the comment too, is not to kill the pawns.
No, I know, but you're obviously, I know how to play chess, okay, obviously, right? But I'm saying you treat the pawns as any other piece, that it's like you want to.
But I think a better metaphor for all this, fittingly enough, is Lord of the Rings, because the whole theme of Lord of the Rings is around the Ring of Power, and you're corrupted. And this is where it goes back to a Christian framework, which is it teaches all people are fundamentally evil, and a Judeo-Christian. Right. And so it's not that like we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. It's that all of us are evil, and there's a way. The only way to overcome it is to be skeptical of the evil inside of you and refuse to put on the ring, which in my mind is putting on the ring is equivalent to I'm going to call my people who disagree with me evil, and I'm going to seek to quash them out by seizing power. And
But here's the thing:
don't
were
think
the
that
orcs evil?
where the orcs were, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So just because they're not the leaders
But
of the
did Frodo
movement,
put on the ring?
No, but no, of course. No, you're making a good point. I'm not saying you're not making a good point, but
I have
I'm
a
saying
great
the other
question for
the
this.
other side, you know, these people who are considered these pawns, the orcs were still evil and they wanted to kill the fellowship.
Right.
You know? So it's like you have to battle against the orcs.
So I think that's
Okay,
it's a difficult.
so-
Yeah, go ahead, Alma.
It's technically for the greater good that you stoop to a moral low. It's for the greater good that you stoop and say you are an evil person, even though they're probably not an evil person, because you win in the end.
No, but again, I'm not saying stoop to a moral low. That's
Well-
not the argument I'm making.
But isn't putting on the ring
saying-
doing more stooping to a more low?
Well, now this metaphor is getting.
I mean, sorry, but you know what I mean.
But-
This is getting out of hand.
Yeah, now the two of them. No, but yeah, I'm not saying to put on the ring and stoop to that low. But I'm saying like all those people in the fellowship, they killed the orcs without putting on the ring. You know, they didn't stoop to a moral low to fight that evil. They just fought the evil and they won in the end. You know what I mean? So that's like what I'm getting at is like you don't have to, you know, there is no talking to an orc. You know, meat's back on the menu and they're ready to eat. You know, it's like I'm not saying all the leftists are orcs. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you know, if we're talking about evil ideologies and all that, you understand what I'm saying. It's like some people, their mind won't be changed, and you have to be prepared to recognize that
Yep.
and take it on.
Yeah, I think there are very few people, but I think that that argument, and we'll move on here shortly, I think that argument falls into the vein of, yes, I'm willing to do this and to call people evil, again, even though they might not be, because it's for the greater good. That's essentially the argument that's being made, that if I win, it's for the greater good of people, and I'm sparing all these people, but I had to stoop to this level to do that. But we disagree on whether or not it's stooping, I guess.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but yeah.
So there we go. You guys have a poll down below. Are you more with Will? Are you more with me? You guys can vote down below and comment down below after the stream is over. Are you more on the side of Matt Walsh? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Will? Do you agree with Taylor? Who made the best metaphor
Yeah.
for the
Yeah, there's
situation
too
at
many.
hand? And now we're going to move on to a video that is kind of heartbreaking, and it's something that we talk about and agree about on this podcast a lot, is that this pandemic has affected young people in a way that has not been recognized, and we're not talking about, and we need to have a discussion about that because we've taken time, we've psychologically abused young kids in a lot of ways during this pandemic, and it's something that people will never be held accountable for. And here's a young British student on the news talking about how she was been affected by the pandemic in England. Here we go.
I sat there in August.
The damage what's done?
That they've done to the rest of our lives, to our education. I sat there in August and literally watched my future crumble in front of my eyes.
Tell me why.
Well, they cancelled my exams. So I got my exams cancelled once, went back and thought, no, you know what, this is not on. I'm not getting screwed over by the algorithm. I'm better than this. Got there, they cancelled them again. And I thought, nothing I can do anymore. So this makes me so angry. It literally ruined our lives, and nobody spoke about it at all. And the commentators, they had union reps come on and say this is what the schools should have put in place, and they didn't care about what this did to us. And this is the first time I've ever spoken about it on TV because I knew that I'd cry about it, but I literally watched and felt like my entire life was falling apart because of what this government did to young people, and nobody cares. Not one person has cared about children in this pandemic. They think, oh, let's throw... Why are we putting masks on them when people can go to football stadiums and they can go to theatres and play Nadeem Zahawi sitting there at the teaching awards with no mask, and yet we're disrespecting kids? This pandemic will finish. The damage this has done for us is forever, and we'll never get it back.
Yikes. That's really hard to watch. It's an interesting thing, and again, we talk about this a lot, is that when we advocate for certain policies and certain extremes, as we've seen over the past 2 years, we always forget the silent victims of this. And students and young people have been the silent victims. And it's particularly harsh and heartbreaking to see a young girl like this who's gone through 2 years of just heartbreak in regard to her education and her career and her passion, and nobody cares. Nobody cares about it.
And there's no price that you can put on that. You can put prices on the number of people who lost their jobs, or the economy, how it was ruined, or the small businesses closed, or the amount of people who had bad side effects, whatever it is. But you can't put a price on that, or you can't put a number on it. There's nothing to show for it.
Yep. And yeah, to just see that come to fruition and have her say that live, it left them all speechless, and rightfully so. And I hope that it echoes in the hearts of people that didn't recognize how big of a problem this is, because so many people were so focused on the fear. And should we lock down? Do I need to get my jabs? Do I need to get my mask? And in all of the confusion and the blur and the haze that they create for you, you forget the people who are being hurt the most. And that is on their hands.
Yeah, it is. It is all on their hands. But they're not going to they're going to, now that they've gotten rid of the vax passports and the mask mandates in the UK, they're going to come, once the numbers start going down, they're going to say, yeah, this is all because of us and what we've done. It's all great. It's all amazing. Our 7 parties during the lockdown. Don't worry about that. This is just, we're really helpful now. That's what it's going to be like. There's going to be no accountability, no anything for these lives ruined. So.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it is just ridiculous. One more story here before we move on to our Throwback Thursday, which I believe Will is leading today.
Wow.
Amazing.
By the way, we should tell people a new place that they can be watching this if they're not watching it right now.
Yes, guys. We're also going to be streaming on another channel called Will and Amala Live. Eventually, we're going to be moving over there. You guys have been commenting and saying, oh my gosh, PragerU gives me so much notification. They're posting so many videos throughout the day. I want to watch Will and Amala Live, but can you put it on its own channel? And can you create clips of the content? Because I can't watch the full show. So now we have our own channel, Will and Amala Live. We're going to be streaming our full episodes there, plus cutting it down into clips. So definitely go and subscribe there, and soon enough you'll be able to watch our stream from that channel alone.
We're there now. We just announced we're streaming there now. We've got a little over 100 people watching, 125, somewhere around there, and we've got almost 2,000 subs in the first 24 hours since we announced it. So This is
cool.
If you want to be one of the first ever subscribers to the Will and Amala Live channel, an OG, then go subscribe there and watch there and join the party. I hear the real chat is going on the Wamala channel.
There you go.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's 2 chats now. How are you supposed to manage?
I know. What are you guys going to do?
Yeah, make sure you like this video if wherever you're watching, especially if you're watching on the new channel, that you like this video and you're commenting, because that'll help us boost it and make more people see our content as soon as it comes out. So thanks for doing that on all our videos on the new channel and on the existing ones.
And a final story here before we get to Throwback Thursday. Reuters put out this fact check, and here's the title of the article. Fact check: World Economic Forum letters show 51st annual meeting invites. So essentially this thing went around Twitter of an invite to the World Economic Forum. So if you guys don't know what the World Economic Forum is, it's where a bunch of leaders, Dutch government leaders specifically, come and meet. And I think they're specifically going to be talking about in this World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, which is part of a sort of globalist economic agenda, which they'll tell you it's about sustainability and building a more sustainable future for our economy and for countries at large. But it is essentially a globalized form of economy that they would like to be in power of. So these little letters went out inviting people, and specifically mentioned in the letter was the Great Reset. So a lot of us on the right get called conspiracy theorists for talking about the Great Reset, because we think it's a restructuring of the world and that the COVID-19 pandemic is being used as a vessel for that restructuring. A guy who talks really prevalently about the Great Reset is a guy by the name of Klaus Schwab. Wrote a book about it that you guys can look up, and about his views of how the world should look in a post-COVID reality. So these letters got put out. People were saying they were leaked, but Reuters is saying the letters were not leaked. We meant to put out those letters that spoke about the Great Reset. In fact, it was part of a Freedom of Information request. So somebody requested that these be released, and they were released. Okay, fine. The second part of their verdict on Reuters is that there is no evidence that the Great Reset is part of an ominous plan for the World Economic Forum to control people. So we're just going to slip that in there. But the letters were not leaked. By the way, the Great Reset is not to control you in the economy.
Well, Reuters chairman is literally on the board of Pfizer and an investor in Pfizer.
Yeah.
To say that these things aren't connected is it's just ridiculous. I mean, these fact checkers, their opinions. I mean, Facebook even admitted in court that these fact checks are opinions. Mm-hmm. Guys, go read Glenn Beck's new book, The Great Reset. Go read his new book. Okay, this will tell you everything that you need to know. Well, not everything, but almost everything that you need to know about what is happening with this Davos group and these types of people. Go look it up. These globalists who want to transform. I mean, it just came in today that the Federal Reserve is talking about a digital currency. You know, to say that this is a conspiracy theorist, that's how they get you. They want to make you feel like you are crazy. They want to make you feel like you're crazy about all this kind of stuff. When it came to the vaccine stuff, I mean, we were saying these things 6 months ago about the numbers and all of this, and they said you're a conspiracy theorist. And now the CEO of Pfizer came out on CBS just last week saying, oh yeah, the efficacy of these things, they don't actually work. And you were called a conspiracy theorist and a horrible person if you said that before. So whenever people call you a conspiracy theorist, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. The Great Reset, okay? It's a conspiracy fact of what these people are trying to do to our lives. And they know it, but they want to push it in ever so slowly.
Yeah, and there's a video that you can go watch. I believe it's on Twitter. And a lot of people don't want to associate themselves with Klaus Schwab because of what he is purporting, and they don't want to be known as being a part of that, even though they are. There's a great video of a guy who was just put in Parliament in the Netherlands going after the PM and saying, look at this letter that you sent to Klaus Schwab saying that his book was fantastic. And I believe it said a hopeful analysis for a better future of the world is what he wrote to Klaus Schwab about the Great Reset and, shaping the world after the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And he tried first to deny that he had ever even sent this letter or read the book. And then once the letter was brought to light, he said, well, we just send those out as a courtesy. I just did that politely. I didn't read the book. I don't support what he said. So as a courtesy, he wrote to this man and said that his book, that his idea about the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a hopeful analysis for a better future. And these are people leading countries. So it is something to be concerned about, I would imagine.
Ik hou Great Reset, Totsing. There's some Dutch for you.
Wow, that was really good.
Any of our Dutch audience, please tell me how I did.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be not good.
A resounding terrible.
Not good.
Actually, I think it's Totsing. Totsings means goodbye. And then ik hou van jou, or ik hou van Great Reset,
Wow.
I think means I love the Great Reset.
You studying for your trip?
I'm studying for my trip.
Wow.
Studying for
Good job.
things.
Really good.
So, yeah.
Well, guess what? I'm going to throw it over to you again. It's your Throwback Thursday.
Ik hou van Throwback Thursday. Dunka. No, that's not. No, that's
Yep.
not.
Nope.
Okay,
Not quite.
Wait, let me pull this up on here. I know we're using your computer, but let me pull it up on here so I can see it. Okay. All right, Throwback Thursday. What's up, guys? Will Witt here with Throwback Thursday. Today we're talking about religion and the founding of the American Republic. This is a contentious topic. A lot of people say that America was not founded on Christian principles and that we are not inherently a nation built upon these values. And I would like to today give you a small case. Didn't have a whole lot of time today, but I will give you a small inkling of a case to say that America actually has a lot more to do with Christianity than what meets the eye and what people will actually tell you, especially people on the left when they talk about America. So let's go through. We can go to the second slide, Amala. So, in the beginning, America wasn't founded inherently as a Christian nation specifically. They weren't going to have things dictated by the Bible, but they did say they wanted it to be a religious nation. They had nothing wrong about saying that we wanted a religious population. And also the populace at the time was actually very keen on that as well. They wanted to have a religious populace. Congress appointed chaplains for itself and the armed forces. This is during the war. This is during the Revolutionary War. Sponsored the publication of a Bible, imposed Christian morality on the armed forces, and granted public lands to promote Christianity among the Indians. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. They're doing a lot more than a lot of people give them credit for. National days of Thanksgiving and of humiliation, fasting, and prayer were proclaimed by Congress at least twice a year throughout the war. Congress was guided by covenant theology, a Reformation doctrine, which held that God bound himself in an agreement with a nation and its people. And I want to get to this last part because this deals with also Abraham Lincoln later in his life. Wars and revolutions were accordingly considered afflictions as divine punishments for sin from which a nation could rescue itself by repentance and reformation. That is the biggest deal because Abraham Lincoln, when he was on his knees making a covenant with God and telling people that he was going to have, in his second inaugural address, he came and said, listen, this war is a punishment to us from God. God is punishing both the North and the South. I am going to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. Tim Ballard told a great telling of this story. And it is people in the founding of this country, not just Abraham Lincoln, realizing that the things that are happening that are bad are punishments from God. This is what the founding fathers said. This is what the people said. You can go to the next slide.
Got it.
Here's what they said. Nothing less than a spirit of universal reformation among all ranks and degrees of our citizens, Congress declared to the American people, would make us a holy, that so we may be a happy people. There is nowhere where you'll find that they said that they do not want to have a religious population and that they don't think that Christianity is a good thing. The Founding Fathers knew what this nation needed. You have inalienable rights endowed on you by your Creator, where in no other country around the world, in any other constitution, you have any sort of system that is like that. They didn't say that you had to believe this, okay? They didn't say that you had to believe this, but the Founding Fathers and the original Congress, they knew that these values made for a good country. The values of the Bible were indispensable from making a country good. They knew that, and they put it out there. There's my Throwback Thursday for you.
Good job, Will.
A quick one. Thomas Jefferson said that if we were to ever have a public school system, you have to include the Bible. I mean, that's just one of his quotes about it. I mean, there are so many that you can dig into about America being founded as a secular nation. PragerU actually has a 5-minute video about was America founded as a secular nation. I urge all of you guys to go check it out. It's very good, among other videos on that similar topic. It is about that you get your rights not from the government. This is why America is so different. This is why America is so special and why people are so proud, why you have patriots all across America saying America is the greatest country to ever exist, why we've been saying that for decades and decades, because there is no other country that says these rights are given to you by God and the government can't come in and take them away. That's why when you see all of these things happening throughout America today, it is so terrible versus like other countries in Western Europe that are basically fine with a lot of it. Whereas here in America, people are not fine with these things to the same degree because we understand that these rights being taken away were given to us by our Creator. And that is the most important thing.
Perfect segue because you're going to a protest about the mandates.
Yes. So there's planned, if you guys, anyone who follows Dr. Robert Malone on his Substack, Steve Kirsch, Peter McCullough, Robert Kennedy Jr., we are having a rally in D.C. this weekend. I will be speaking along with these great men. Excuse me. You can go to Defeat the Mandates DC. I believe we put the link in the description of the video today. There's supposed to be 60,000 people. That's how many signups that we got on the website for people coming to this march. 60,000 people in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., Mayor Bowser has turned D.C. into essentially a communist state, and with their new Vax passports and all this kind of stuff. And what they are trying to do is make it so that if you have a discrepancy with the federal government, you cannot come in if you are unvaccinated to come and protest. And we are basically coming and saying, screw you. We're going to get as many people as possible to come here and tell you that this is not a right versus left issue. This is not, Republican, Democrat. This is a human rights issue, and we are not going to let you get away with all this. So if you are in D.C. or you're on the East Coast, or even you want to book a flight and come out to D.C. this weekend, because it's going to be the biggest march that we've had in America for this. Defeat the Mandates D.C., come join us, march with us from the Lincoln Memorial. It's going to be truly an incredible event. Get all the information. I believe it starts at 10:30 on Sunday morning.
There's your call to action, guys. Get involved, say something, do something, and start a conversation with somebody about that you disagree with and parse that out and see where you get. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Call them evil.
And call them evil, yes.
Listen.
That'll be helpful.
I will.
And if you won't, Will will do it for you. Will will personally call this person.
Yeah. It's like those cameos, where you pay someone to say happy birthday.
Right.
You guys can just send me money and I'll send videos to people calling them evil.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, evil cameos.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single day when we go live. And we're going live from more than one place now. We have a new channel called Will and Amala Live that you can go and please follow and subscribe to on YouTube, because we are going to eventually be transferring over there. So every day when we stream on PragerU, we're also streaming on Will and Amala Live. Eventually, we'll just be reading the YouTube chat from Will and Amala Live, also posting clips there for you guys. So go and subscribe as soon as you can. And we're going to be back tomorrow, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern, to talk to you about some more stories. And we will see you then. Bye, guys.